To make the circus tent waterproof, they painted it with 1,800 pounds of paraffin wax and 6,000 gallons of gasoline. On July 6, 1944, it burned completely to the ground in 8 minutes. You're listening to The Unlit Room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. This episode's narration is AI-generated. The research, writing, and editorial decisions behind every story are made with care for accuracy and respect for those involved. Today, a fire safety measure that became an inferno. July 6, 1944. Hartford, Connecticut. The Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus had set up their big top tent on a vacant lot on Bar Burr Street. The tent measured 425 feet long, 180 feet wide, approximately 3 acres of canvas stretched over wooden poles and guy wires. It was the largest movable structure in the world. Inside, approximately 6,000 to 8,000 people sat on wooden bleacher seats. It was a Thursday afternoon matinee. Most of the crowd was women and children. The men were at work or at war. Families sat shoulder to shoulder in the July heat. The great Walendars were 30 feet above the crowd, walking the high wire. It was hot. The tent interior was stifling, and at 2:25 p.m., a small flame appeared on the southwest side wall near the men's restroom area. At first, the flame was about the size of a dinner plate, 20 feet up the canvas sidewall. Ushers ran toward it with tent stakes, trying to beat it out. Band leader Merle Evans saw the smoke from his position near the center ring. He didn't hesitate. He signaled the band immediately. Mid-note, they switched to the Stars and Stripes Forever, the disaster code every circus performer knows. Play that song and every act stops. Every performer knows, get out. The Walendars were 30 feet above the crowd, balanced on a wire thinner than a garden hose. They saw the flame spreading beneath them. They didn't panic. They climbed down, hand over hand, using the guide wires, while the fire raced across the ceiling above them. Within seconds, the flame spread horizontally across the canvas. Not slowly, not the way canvas normally burns. The fire moved like liquid across the surface of the tent. Because the canvas wasn't burning, it was melting. That winter and spring, circus workers had applied a waterproofing compound to the massive tent. The mixture, 1,800 pounds of paraffin wax, melted down and mixed with approximately 6,000 gallons of white gasoline. They brushed it onto the canvas in liquid form. It dried into a waxy, flammable coating that covered the entire 3-acre surface. The workers thought they were protecting the tent from rain damage. They didn't understand they were creating a massive accelerant. The tent didn't catch fire like fabric. The paraffin gasoline coating liquefied in the heat and dripped, flaming molten droplets falling onto the crowd below. Mothers shielded their children. People tried to move toward the exits. But the wooden bleacher seats, packed tight, made movement almost impossible. The circus had used this waterproofing mixture for years. It was standard practice, cheaper than other treatments, effective against rain. Nobody had questioned it until it became a ceiling of fire. Micro Cliffhanger 1. The fire spread across the tent in less than 3 minutes. But for hundreds of people trying to escape, there was another problem. One the circus had created for itself. Some of the exits were blocked, not by the fire, by animal chutes, metal runways set up for the next act. The circus staff had positioned them near several exit paths. When the crowd surged toward those exits, they found steel barriers in their way. People tried to climb over, tried to push through. Some made it, others were trampled in the crush. Inside the tent, the temperature climbed past 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit in places. The thick black smoke filled the space faster than people could move. Burning paraffin dripped onto those still trapped beneath. At 2:30 p.m., 5 minutes after the first flame appeared, the main center poles began to sway. The guy wires, weakened by heat, snapped with sounds like rifle shots. One after another, sharp cracks that cut through the screaming and the roar of the fire. The entire tent structure collapsed inward. Burning canvas fell onto the crowd still trapped beneath it. Some spectators were pinned under fallen bleacher sections that buckled and twisted in the heat. Others were caught under the tent itself, 3 acres of flaming, melted fabric pressing down. The Hartford Fire Department arrived within 5 minutes of the first alarm. Fire trucks pulled up to bar Burr Street. Firefighters unrolled hoses. By the time they got water on the fire, the tent was already gone. What had been the largest movable structure in the world was reduced to charred poles and melted metal frames. The waterproofing mixture, paraffin wax and gasoline, was a known fire hazard. In 1942, 2 years before Hartford, a smaller Ringling tent had caught fire in Cleveland. The fire had been linked to the same coating. The company had been warned. They continued using it anyway. Because it was cheap, because it worked against rain, because changing suppliers and processes would cost time and money. They knew the risk. They calculated that it was worth it. 167 people died, over 700 were injured. The fire was completely extinguished by 2:35 p.m., less than 10 minutes from start to finish. What remained, charred tent poles standing like burned trees, melted metal bleacher frames, and silence. In the days after the fire, the Hartford Municipal Morgue became the center of a different kind of tragedy. 168 bodies were laid out for identification. Families moved through, searching for missing children, mothers, neighbors. Most were identified within hours. Some took days. But one body, a girl, approximately 6 to 8 years old, light brown hair, wearing a white dress, remained unclaimed. No one reported a child of her description missing. Her photograph was published in newspapers across Connecticut. Thousands of people saw it. No one came forward. She was assigned a morgue number, 1565. Little Miss 1565. In 1945, she was buried in a marked grave at Northwood Cemetery, still unidentified. For 47 years, she was one of Connecticut's enduring mysteries. Who was she? Where was her family? Why had no one claimed her? The answer, when it finally came, wasn't mysterious at all. It was clerical. The fire started somewhere on that southwest sidewall, but how it started, that question was never fully answered. The initial fire marshal investigation pointed to a discarded cigarette. Witnesses reported seeing someone near the area where the fire began. Smoking was common at the time. It was the simplest explanation. But there was no physical evidence, no cigarette butt found, and the fire spread pattern didn't match a single point of ignition. In 1950, 6 years after the fire, a former circus worker named Robert Segui confessed. He said he'd started the Hartford fire, along with several others. He gave detailed accounts. He had a documented history of arson. The FBI investigated. But Segui's confession came during questioning for unrelated crimes. He later recanted. There was no physical evidence linking him to the scene. Modern investigators consider the confession unreliable. Some engineers suggested the paraffin-gasoline mixture could have ignited spontaneously in the July heat. The tent interior reached extreme temperatures that afternoon, but there were no documented cases of that specific mixture igniting on its own. The official cause of the Hartford Circus fire remains undetermined. Arson suspected, never proven. The how matters less than the why it spread, and that part everyone agrees on. The waterproofing turned a small flame into an inferno. In 1991, fire investigator Rick Davey reopened the case. He worked through elimination, dental records, and cross-referencing family reports. After months of work, he identified her, Eleanor Emily Cook. 6 years old, Eleanor had died in the fire alongside her mother. Her extended family had buried the mother, unaware that Eleanor had been separated in the chaos and logged as unidentified. Nobody had connected the pieces. The mystery was a failure of communication in the immediate aftermath of a disaster. Her grave was rededicated with her name. The mystery solved by a detail everyone had overlooked for 47 years. 6 Ringling Brothers employees were indicted for involuntary manslaughter. They served prison terms. The circus paid approximately $5 million in settlements to survivors and families. The company never used paraffin gasoline waterproofing again. The Hartford fire led to sweeping fire safety reforms nationwide. Connecticut passed some of the strictest fire safety laws in the country within months of the disaster. Other states followed. Modern fire codes, occupancy limits, exit requirements, flame retardant materials, emergency lighting, clear egress paths were built on the lessons learned from disasters like this one. 167 people died because a company chose convenience over safety, because a known hazard was allowed to persist, because exits were blocked by equipment that didn't need to be there. Eleanor Cook finally got her name back in 1991. The fire codes that grew out of Hartford have saved countless lives since. From horror, we built safety. It doesn't undo the loss, but it means those deaths weren't meaningless. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. Follow the Unlit Room wherever you listen. Tell a friend who can't sleep. Full story on the main channel. Follow if you're wide awake. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.